Welcome to Dr. J. Albanese, professor in the Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University, and the first ever doctoral recipient from Rutgers School of Criminal Justice. We love to talk about how you are the first to get a PhD from our school, but we can say that you have gone on to do more than just be the first person to graduate. Um, just one thing. You're the author and or editor of 20 books. Is this true?
Yes, I'm afraid I am.
How? How?
Well, it started at the beginning with some very good role models in graduate school, because when I wandered to Newark for the very first time back in the 1970s, Rutgers had just opened the new School of Criminal Justice in Newark. And I didn't know much about Jersey. I was born and raised on Long Island. And I came over, and at that time there were 5 or 6 total faculty, and the school had just opened, and Don Gottfredson was dean, and the founding faculty were just great people. And here I am all these years later, and I maintain friendships with virtually all of them for many years afterwards. So the relationships I formed at Rutgers with my professors when I was a student served as a great role model for me as I became a professor and then had my own students after that.
So in that case, I'm going to skip down and ask a question I wasn't going to ask right away.
Sure.
But you have been given an award for distinguished teaching from Virginia Commonwealth. I think this is probably somewhat unusual that you can combine all of this research and all of this field work that you've been doing and still be a really good teacher. How do you do that?
Yeah, I find teaching was the hardest thing of all to master. And for me, the best teachers are the ones that engage students in a conversation. Rather than talk to the students, you talk with the students. And the extent to which you can do that, I think, really enhances your ability as a teacher. Because I find, even if you're not the best teacher who ever walked the earth, if you're interested, motivated, excited about what you're talking about, excited about the subject matter, students feel that. And I think that is the important part of being, an effective teacher.
It takes a lot of time, but it's worth it.
I'm afraid it does. Yeah, that teaching award I got at VCO, I was very pleased to get that, mainly because like Rutgers, Virginia Commonwealth University is a large university, 30,000 students. And I was always pleased to get an award that didn't go to somebody in the medical school or the engineering school or the big behemoths on campus. Right. So it's good that it's always good to get an award away from one of those other units.
Thank you. All right. So one of your chief focuses is on organized crime. Why did you choose this area of research? And even more specifically, why did you take it on internationally?
Yeah, well, as you know, the world changes all the time. And this is one of the problems with the field that we're in criminal justice. It changes every single day. I often thought we should have gone into just a philosophy department, because I figure, Aristotle hasn't written anything lately. It's right. Easier to keep up. But here we're sort of doomed to deal with current events, and usually problems much more than solutions. But what happened during the early part of my life and career is that the Soviet Union collapsed, and we had all this global change, the new emerging democracies of Eastern Europe, and all kinds of major radical change around the world. And that changed organized crime from a historical focus on mafia-related things to now it's a global thing, and that changed it all. And I should say, I'm very indebted to the Rutgers faculty uh, for, getting me where I got to internationally. A quick story. Uh, I was appointed chief of the International Center at NIJ, the National Institute of Justice, which is the research arm of the Department of Justice. So I was there on loan from the university for 4 years, and it was great. I was the second person to hold that position. The first person to hold that position was Jim Finkenauer, who was a Rutgers faculty member and one of my instructors back in the day. So I was pleased to do it. And of course, I came on less than a year after 9/11. So the National Institute, they had no agenda for terrorism. The human trafficking law was just passed a year and a half earlier. They had no research agenda going on human trafficking. So all of these things were happening. The whole idea of transnational organized crime, they were all new concepts. So it was a great opportunity. I thought, if you're going to do government service, this is the time to do it. So it was very exciting. One other quick story. So here I am, chief of the International Center. I'm going to UN meetings regularly and things. There's a meeting in Italy. There's a small place called Courmayeur, sort of very north Italy, north of Torino. So anyway, I go there, and I should make a side note that Gerhard Mueller, another of the founding faculty at Rutgers, was formerly chief of the UN crime prevention effort for a number of years before he came to Rutgers. So he's very, very well known in UN circles. So I'm there, and I'm kind of the new guy trying to feel my way around, So we get picked up at the airport, the bus drops us off. I'm the only American in a group of like 20 people. And anyway, the head of the UN unit at that time, Eduardo Vettere, who's an Italian, and this night comes up to the bus. He comes running up to me, gives me a big hug, the kiss on both cheeks, as is the Italian tradition, and says, "You are the student." And I knew immediately that he said that because I was a student of Gerhard Mueller, wow, who he had worked for earlier than that. So speaking of succeeding on the backs of those who preceded you, yeah, I never felt more grateful to have gone to Rutgers because I got credibility just because of the credibility of the people who taught me.
It's so true. And have you spent any time with Jim Finkenauer in Russia? Because I heard a lot of stories about drinking, and the only way to really get the information was to drink a lot of vodka. I don't really know if this is a true story, but this is what I heard from him.
Well, yeah, I was part of that expedition. We made numerous trips to Ukraine, and they were great. In Ukraine, the level of hospitality would just knock your socks off. So after one morning seminar, they said, we're going to take the Americans to lunch, and there were 4 of us, and Jim Finkenauer was among the group. And we go into this, walk down like small restaurant with maybe 20 tables in it. There was no other people in the restaurant. They had clearly bought out the whole seating in the restaurant. So we all sit at a round table, and we did this almost every time we had a meal with them, every dinner. The table, when you sit down at it, is covered, with food and liquor and wine. Just covered. And the head of the Ukrainian Law Academy stands up we'll usually start with champagne, but then quickly go to vodka. And he makes a toast. And then, of course, and then we go around, then you respond to a toast. And at that time, Jim Finkenauer did the first response, and then we go, anyway. And of course, the Ukrainians drank the whole glass of whatever they had every time they had a toast. So you learn very quickly. You can't be matching them drink for drink, otherwise you won't be able to talk. But the level of hospitality over there was really wonderful. Some very good people, and the culture was great because they have a good sense of history. And they would take us around and say, well, that is where the church used to stand. And then they start talking about Stalin as if Stalin happened like 2 weeks ago. So the whole history of the whole area. So, I wish in America, young people had a better sense of their own history, but they loved it and they cherished it. And they would love to point out things. Like if you would ever say something like, oh, I love the Russian ballet, you don't say that to a Ukrainian, because they will point out, they would say, okay, name a great ballerina. And of course, they would point out that most of them were Ukrainian, not Russian.
I see.
And so it's really, it was a great cultural experience. And yeah, every meal was like a Thanksgiving celebration.
Well, speaking of Gerhard Mueller, you have won an award from the international section of ACJS. What does it mean to you to have won an award named for Gerhard Mueller?
Yeah, that was, when you look back at your professional life, that was a highlight, a major highlight. Simply because, and I was given the award at the meeting, it was in Toronto, as I recall, and it was great. I mean, and of course, Frida Adler was there, his wife, also a criminologist, also one of the founding faculty at Rutgers, who is extremely well known in her own right. And she was there, and she came up and said, Gerhard would be so proud, and it just fills you up. That you could do that. And I do have to say, I'm very pleased. I just heard the other day the upcoming American Society of Criminology meeting taking place in November in Chicago. Yeah. That meeting, the ASC Division of International Criminology is awarding me the Frida Adler Award. And that is terrific. I haven't spoken to Frida. I did leave a message on her phone, but it's one of those things. In my, to best of my knowledge, there are two criminology awards named after faculty: the Gerhard Mueller Award and the Frida Adler Award. And now to have gotten both of them, it just fills your heart.
That is amazing. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's
and what does that award encompass? What is that award for?
That is for contributions to international criminology. Most of the people who've gotten that award tend to be non-US people. They tend to be people from overseas. There might have been one other American who's gotten it. Yeah, because it always goes to an international scholar, and in the past that somebody overseas, but now there's so many Americans working overseas and non-US people working in America, it doesn't really matter where you are, So yes, I was very, very pleased to get that news.
That's amazing. All right, so what do you do next? I mean, you kind of have done everything. You've had so many titles. As you said, Director, International Association of Organized Crime. I didn't even realize you were the past president of ACJS.
Yeah.
The two faculty named awards. What do you do now?
Well, there's a lot going on. The main thing is, as someone who is a professor, you work on a cascading effect. Because if I was to start graduate school again today, I would go right back to Rutgers. It was a wonderful experience. It was great faculty. It certainly served me well. And I ended up with lifelong relationships so I mean, what else can you ask for? And over the years, I have had a number of colleagues, you go to these annual conferences, who teach at universities all over the place, who say how jealous they are and how much they wish they had faculty like Frida and Gerhard to teach them, because they were so giving. They would sponsor parties. I mean, it was really just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And people say, wow, these people are your professors.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
My students think I'm lying. They think I'm lying. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I had her. I had Mueller. I had Clark. I had Felsen. I had Killing. And they say, Professor, that isn't true. You're making that stuff. No, we were very lucky. And I guess they've got a lot of young, exciting professors there now taking up the mantle from the
Right.
original founders.
Yes, and life goes on, but yeah, these people are household names in the world of criminology. And like I point out to people when people say, well, what made Rutgers different from a lot of the other schools? I said, what makes Rutgers different is that the faculty there were there talking about ideas. So when you talk about the contributions of Clark and Felsen and Frieda and everybody else, they contributed ideas that changed the field. And so it's not like they wrote a book and that was the end of it. They changed the field through their thought, through their ideas, that have had cascading effects now for a few generations. So and I think that separated the Rutgers experience from a lot of my friends who went to other universities.
All right, I've got one last question for you. What is the best part about being the first one?
The best part about being the first graduate was that I didn't have to follow anybody else, and didn't even know I was going to be the first graduate. It's not anything you set out to. I was in the first PhD class, and there were only four of us in the class. So and as usual happens, I think two of us ultimately did graduate, two didn't, and whatever goes on. But yeah, it was great. It was fun, and when one of my current students hears about that, they think I was in the class maybe with Aristotle. They said it's so long ago. But no, it's very good, and we have a number of. I guess one other really important thing to highlight about my Rutgers experience is not only faculty, but a lot of my colleagues, like you and many others, become your friends. We see each other at conferences, you have drinks together, you talk about the old days, you complain about the new days. But that same camaraderie you had as students, you carry on now that we're all, professionals working in the world. But it's a wonderful thing. So, the graduate school is experience, the anxiety about papers and exams, sharing drinks and complaining about classes. And now here we are as working professionals, and you still get to hang with those same people at conferences and talk about, things. And it's just great. It's almost like having this core friendship group that you take with you throughout your life. How can you beat that?